I think already, we're doing that thing of perhaps over intellectualizing the issue. I think
Possibly.
that the thing is this this is one of those issues that would actually be very easy to solve, but it does not fit within the liberal worldview to do what would actually to do what would actually work. To do what would actually work does not fit within the modern liberalized worldview. I mean, if you actually wanted to solve it, you would ban birth control and you would certainly ban abortion. And you would perhaps also do stuff to fix people's hormones because testosterone is plummeting and women's hormones are getting scrambled. But I mean, that would actually fix it. So I'm not even saying like, yeah, this is I'm all for banning abortion, by the way. I'm not even advocating banning birth control. But my point is that would actually, if you actually, if people were like dead serious about wanting to fix the issue, then that would fix it. But that concept will make many people, liberals for sure, but even many conservatives, it would make them sort of like real and be like, oh, no, 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 we can't do that. We need to do like try to tweak all these other knobs. But tweaking all those other knobs, honestly, is not going to do much. Like it's really not going to do much.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think something like that would work. I mean, like, how would you even
It would
go about
work.
banning?
No, it would work. It would work.
But how could you be
But there's
sure? I
not
mean,
there's not the political will to do it. Of course it would work. How would it not? People aren't going to
well, the
stop
first
having
thing is
sex.
how would you actually even
People
ban?
are people are okay.
How would you
Okay,
ban
go ahead.
birth
Sorry.
control? I mean, like I don't know how that would work. Like, how would you do it? Like, because I think if you try to ban something in today's liberal world, it just wouldn't work because people would be able to source birth control from pretty much anywhere. I mean, you can at the absolute worst, you could use the skin of a sausage and put that over your dick and use that as birth control. Do you know what I mean? It's like what I'm trying to say
But
is that
look, if we go back prior to the 1960s,
right,
prior to
the
reliable
prior to
birth
the
control,
sexual
particularly,
revolution,
yes, if we go pre 1960s, there were zero countries in the world, as far as I'm aware, that had a major issue with birth rate.
yeah. I
From the
mean,
1960s, it's been massively
yeah,
plummeting. Again,
the pro
I'm just saying that I know people want to have like, oh, we need to look at this and this and this and this, and I'm just like, to me, it's a bit like the crime issue. It's a bit like,
yeah.
okay, yeah, you can tweak this and tweak that and tweak that. And I'm not saying that has zero impact, but if you really, really wanted to solve the issue, then you've got to do an El Salvador.
Yeah, I mean, it could possibly work in. I think if a country was less liberal and it was more rural, I think it might work. But again, there's no political will, as you pointed out, and there's no logistical way to do it. There's no pragmatic way to actually ban something like that. I mean, you wouldn't be able to get a law like that through Congress or through Parliament. And even if you did, like, it would be very, very hard to enforce a law like that, especially in a world that's globalized like ours. I just don't see it being a viable solution, even if there was a political will for it. So I think, unfortunately, we have to consider, more sort of intellectual sort of solutions. And it's a bit of a scary one because it like all of the things, because I've spoken to quite a lot of people about this, and nobody seems to have a good solution that actually would actually work like in the real world, and there's a lot of ideas in theory. I mean, the idea of artificial wombs is repels a lot of people. It kind of makes me feel uncomfortable.
The thing is, we don't need artificial wombs. Like we genuinely don't. Like the problem is like, look, and I'm not here like moralizing, right? Like if look, if I had been born, if I had been born 50 years before I was, I'm pretty sure I would have at least 4 kids by now. I'm like 99% sure of that. So I myself, someone who is more conservative and who is more religious, is I'm also impacted by the milieu that I grew up in. I'm also impacted by culture, by society, by technology, by things that the world is telling you, by all of these sorts of things. The truth is, the average age of marriage for both men and women and the average age of having a first child has been pushed up by about a decade from a few decades ago. So if people are starting that at, let's say, 30 or even 35, as opposed to 20 or 25, then the results are sort of inevitable, right? Like it's not rocket science. I know you're not supposed to tell women that they have a fertility window, but they do. You know, if you start trying to have kids at 40, it's going to be a lot harder than it would have if you started at 20. We know these things, but again, I think the political correctness and not wanting to suggest this or suggest that. I also think some of the blank slateism plays into this. Um, it sounds like a radical idea to some people, but I don't think it's radical at all. I don't necessarily think that the sort of structure of life of even men and women in general should look identical. I think it would make complete sense. And this is something that, you know, a policy could be done. This is something where incentives could be made that would encourage women to perhaps start a family, make it easier for them to start a family prior to pursuing or completing higher education. Again, knowing that, hey, if you're a man, you know what, you could wait until you're 40 and then you could be like, oh, you know what, I want to start a family now. If you're a woman, it's much, much harder to do that. And we're telling this lie under the name of egalitarianism and blank slateism that, oh no, it's totally fine, right? Men and women can and should pursue the exact same timeline. And as a result, there are millions, the vast majority of people who end up permanently childless, vast majority of them did not want that and did not plan for that, right? A lot of people think that this is happening just because people are voluntarily choosing not to have kids, and that's not the case. The vast majority of people, over 80% of the people who end up permanently, you know, at 50 years old without any kids, they did want to have children, and I think this is sad, by the way. But for all of these reasons, I mean, there's that. Of course, there's infertility as well. I mean, that's now affecting about 1 in 3 couples, and there's many different reasons for that. One of them is age, hormonal disruption, sperm quality. There's a lot of factors going in. I don't know like absolutely everything, but there are a few sort of very obvious ones that I think people want to skirt around. And while the concept of an artificial womb it's certainly interesting technologically, sort of freaks me out, but it's interesting, but it's kind of like, well, what's the problem that we're solving here? It's not like women's wombs have sort of generally stopped working.
Yeah, I think with artificial wombs, I think one of the sort of proposed benefits of those would be that they would allow women to pursue careers whilst also gestating a child, because you could, if you gestate a child in an artificial womb, then obviously you don't need to take time out from your career or whatever. And so women like who are high flyers or who are really career oriented, they could still have a child, have, you know, they don't have to take 9 months out or whatever to do that. Whether it would work in practice, I don't know, but this is one of the ideas that's proposed. And then also there's the idea that, you know, I think I actually think artificial wombs are going to be a thing regardless of what people think of them, and that even if they're not used by civilians, they will probably be used by the military at some point, because I think that maybe, you know, when it gets viable to actually create your own human, I think the military are probably going to do this sort of, you know, probably not out in the open, but why would you not? Like, if you want to dominate the world, why would you not create superhumans? You know, there's just literally no, like, if you're someone like China, or you're the sort of DARPA, you know, and you're just interested in taking over the world, which they are, they want to have maximum power. It just makes no sense to not create superhumans like that you can use for whatever ability.
I have a thought on that. Wouldn't it make more sense to use? I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to use robotics or drones? Why would you want to create humans?
You can do both, you know, because obviously there's going to be some things that machines can't do, which is like have true free will, like agency, you know. And there are obviously now, like, I mean, everybody's focused on AI, you know, everybody's talking about robotics and machines, but there's actually been some massive developments in the world of CRISPR, gene editing, and also there has been a lot of development in sort of the creation of artificial wombs, mainly with animals. But as soon as it becomes viable to create um, a superior human, superior in quotes, I just don't see how people would not do that. There's going to be some people out there who will want to do it for whatever reason. If you could create, you know, scientists with super IQs, you know, or even if you just wanted to create like somebody like a wife, you know, create your own wife. In the I'm not talking in the near future. I'm talking in the far future. Do you know what I mean? But think about when it's easy, when it's eventually going to become miniaturized. Everything. One sort of rule of law of technology is that things become miniaturized over time. They become smaller. They become easier to do at home. And I would say maybe in 100 years, so it might be a long time away, but in 100 years, it will be possible to create your own human in your house without using biology, without having sex. So you could actually, on a computer, on a machine, you could probably create your own human. And I think about that and I think, where would that lead? When you can actually create your own human with the qualities that you want them to have. You could actually set the genes, the polygenetic sort of structure of their body. You could create that yourself. What would you do with that? That's a very scary thought, but that's going to happen, I think, because again, miniaturization is an iron law of technology. Things become easier over time. They become smaller over time.
Mm.
Eventually, artificial wombs will become small enough that somebody could do them in their basement, and that might be the only solution that we have. I pray it's not, but that might be the only solution we have eventually to procreation, because there's these beautiful ideas out there, but I don't know if any of them will work. There was one idea that I thought of, which would be that I think one of the reasons why people are not having children is that men are just not finding the incentives to not be as good, to actually settle down and start a family, because they're thinking of the short term rather than the long
Yeah,
term.
you're correct. Yeah,
And
you're correct.
yeah, and I think if you could make the incentives better. I mean, one reason why I think the incentives are considered bad is that men consider it a lot of work, and there's a lot of pain in being rejected by a woman. So if you actually go up to a woman, and actually ask her out, uh, that there's a potential cost there of being rejected, and there's
Mhm.
also even if you're not rejected, then there's a lot of work you have to put in. And I think that making things easy goes a long way. That's being underestimated. So maybe one of the things that's happening is that a lot of men are now finding AI girlfriends, and
Oh
this has
boy.
kind of led me. This is yeah, there are AI girlfriends are becoming big business now, and one of the things I was thinking is maybe we could use these AI girlfriends to actually train men to go out there and meet real girlfriends. You know, instead of
Oh
being a
boy.
substitute.
This is so
You know,
dystopian.
yeah. Instead of being a substitute, like maybe you could use these AI girlfriends to actually incentivize people to go out there and meet a real girlfriend by making them feel like they're improving their confidence, basically. Maybe that could
Mhm.
work. But again, like this
We
is
need to we need to fix testosterone levels, man. Like the testosterone levels are
yeah,
they've
that's
dropped so
also
hard that this is even becoming a conversation.
yeah, that's also an issue. But ultimately, one of the things that I do fear is whatever's easiest tends to take over. That tends to become the
Yes.
norm. Convenience culture is, I suppose, what we would call it. And so I'm trying to work out like the things that are going to what's going to become more convenient in the future, because usually that's a good way to predict the future. And this is why I'm worried about artificial wombs, because eventually it's going to become more convenient. I'm not talking about in the next decade or even in the next 50 years. I'm talking pretty far in the future. So next 100 years, right? This is my estimate. In the next 100 years, it will be easier to just print your own human than it would be to actually raise a human in the natural way. And so, what is that going to lead to? Like, because it's hard work to raise a child naturally,
Mhm.
not only for the woman like during pregnancy, but everything that comes after. For like 18 years, you have to raise this child. You have to dedicate your entire life to this child for 18 years, and even after that, you have to, take care of them. And it's like when you can do all of that in a few weeks, maybe in a month, you could grow a human in a week or a month.
But then it loses. But then it loses all of its value, meaning, and purpose.
That's a scary thought, and it's one that I think about a
Yeah.
lot. Because that's obviously most people aren't thinking about this because this is very very far in the future. We're not going to be able to do this for a long time, but it's going to happen, I think, eventually, and it's something we're going to have to think about at some point. Where
Do you know what I
what?
think? Oh, sorry. Carry on. I don't
Sorry,
mean
no,
to
no,
interrupt.
no, no, no. Sorry, I was pretty much done anyway.
I was going to say that I don't know. I don't know what the mechanism is going to be, but I'm going to make a prediction about this prediction. And my prediction is that through some mechanism or some combination of unknown unknowns or ignored knowns, that this is going to massively implode. and it's going to be a catastrophe. It's going. I believe it's some
Yeah.
like maybe this is the Christian in me, but I think that there's a level of man playing God where once it goes past a certain point of pursuing this so-called utopia, it always collapses and results in an undesirable utopia. I think once you're at the part of instead of people having sex and reproducing, you're making human beings in bags and people's girlfriends are AI and you're like doing I just think that at that point or before you get to that point, something goes so horribly wrong in the
Mm,
experiment that I'm not
yeah.
going to say like it wipes out humanity, probably not that extreme, but it causes some sort of massive reversion where it's like, okay, we need to go back to the old school way of doing things. That would be my
Yeah.
predictions. I don't know what that
Well,
mechanism will be, but I think that
yeah.
would happen.
Well, I agree with you, and it's funny because I'm not a Christian, but I agree with you 100%, and it's because I'm actually looking at evolution rather than Christianity. And for me, because I try to look at things from an evolutionary perspective, and the way I see things is that we're creating for ourselves a world we didn't evolve for. In other words, a world we're not adapted to. And what's happening is that the pace of technological evolution is outpacing biological evolution. So we're creating all of these changes to our society and to our environment faster than we can adapt to it. And this is accelerating over time because, as we said, earlier, technological growth is exponential. Evolution occurs on a much longer timescale. Like biological evolution occurs on a much longer timescale than technological development. And so the gap between the world that we're creating and the world that we evolve for is expanding. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is, again, a reason why I agree with you. I think that this is going to lead, I hope it doesn't, but I think it's going to lead to some kind of reckoning where we're going to have to, something bad is going to happen and we're going to have to work out how to get ourselves out of this hole.
This episode is brought to you by Sambrosa, the best way to get your 8 hours of rest. If, like me, you sometimes struggle with nighttime restlessness and allergies, then Sambrosa Night Syrup could be a game changer for you. Sambrosa contains a natural base of 7 organic herbs, honey, and a small amount of antihistamine. It's effective and soothing with no harsh chemicals, no high fructose corn syrup, and no artificial flavors or dyes. I've been using Sambrosa for several months now, and I can personally vouch for its effectiveness when it comes to improving my quality of rest at night. I also love the fact that they're a family-owned company who share my values of faith, freedom, and integrity. My listeners can try Sambrosa today and get 10% off by going to sambrosa.com/Zuby10. That's SAMBROSA.com/Zuby10 for 10% off your order. Try Sambrosa today and wake up ready to embrace life's opportunities. Go to sambrosa.com/Zuby10 and try it out.